So, yes, we know recording is in progress. So why don't we start with a breath and a lighting of the chalice and these words by me. There are no good opening words written long ago or even recently to capture this moment. We are in uncharted territory, taking up a task our past selves and our ancestors can only imagine. Here we are. We are the people this moment needs. And so let us take up our work in covenant, in faith, in pursuit of healing and holding. Let our work be fruitful and helpful despite our fears and uncertainties, despite our anxieties and frustrations. And let us chart this new course that says we were, we are, and we can be again. So what this is a personalized conversation based on a series of trainings I did over the summer called The Art of Hybrid Worship. And in my discussions with Reverend Karen, we said, why don't we do a separate thing, tailor it, knowing that you're in process, getting things installed, set up, and we'll have some particular questions. So where I want to start is finding out what you've done. I know I've been in your sanctuary several times. I preached there. I led a workshop there. I know your setting, but tell me about where you are with the tech side and what you're thinking about. Well, let's start with the tech side.
Would you like me to take this one?
Yes, please, Nick. Thank you.
Okay, you got it. So we have the whole audiovisual booth. Basically, it's like a TV studio, which will be controlling two cameras that are movable. I guess one will be reverend focused, and one will be musician focused.
Okay.
And they might do some other things. And then we also have one television monitor that's theoretically big enough to be seen from the back of the sanctuary.
Yep.
It'll display videos and hymn lyrics and whatever else we decide to display on there. And so we'll be starting out. We'll just have a worship team in the sanctuary, and we'll be live streaming to Zoom.
Yep.
So nothing the congregation is doing right now will change. They'll still sign into Zoom. They'll just now see us in the sanctuary.
Okay.
For a bit until we decide to change that. So it's safe enough to go in.
Okay. Are you using any video switching software? Or are you running everything through Zoom?
Yes, we're using a customized software. We have an organization that has put together this system for us. Read Sounds is the company. So they designed all this stuff. They have video switching software. They have a preset audio mixer that will automatically pick up the microphones when they're being spoken into.
Okay.
Yeah, and Saturday we're doing training on the video, on the whole running the whole system.
Right. Okay.
So I haven't seen it yet, but I know it's similar to like OBS.
Yep. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
That's fine. I don't need the particulars. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Just do you know if you're thinking about truly multi-platform in terms of, say, a reading or a speaker might be online and that would be streamed to everybody, both in the sanctuary and online? Is that the kind of thing you're thinking about?
Yes.
Yes.
I believe so. Yeah, we talked about that, and I know we have guest speakers already lined up.
Right.
Is that you?
Like me. Yeah.
Like you, exactly. That's right. So that'll be the same. That'll be streamed into the sanctuary and also to
beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, that's exciting. That's good to know. You're moving cameras. Do they zoom or do they just pivot? Do you know?
They do. They zoom, they pivot, they are like 360. I think they're 20 times zoom.
Okay.
Zoomable. Maybe even 30.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. That's the first question. So that gives us all a sense of what's happening in the room or what equipment you're working with. And it helps that you've worked with some experts and aren't like trying to cobble together something, which many congregations are doing.
We did start that way.
Right.
But then we decided to hire someone. Yeah.
My other, well, as we talk through, why don't we do this? Well, because where I want to focus, I mean, this helps in terms of the more of the performative and the ritual stuff, just to know what your setup is. But what I want to talk a lot about and help you make some, understanding, and ask questions around are things around how to handle certain aspects of your order of service, how to actually present to a hybrid audience or a multi-platform audience, things to think about when you're speaking to a camera in a room, how we're going to approach certain rituals. So that's the kind of thing that I'm hoping to share with you. My question before I dive into that whole thing is, what are some of the questions right now that you have for me? And I'll see, they may get answered in the stream of the next hour and 20 minutes, or I'll have to add them in. So what are some of the questions you might have at the moment? Or do you just want to see where we go and go from there? Okay. All right. We can do that. Good. So the first thing to say is, remember in March of 2020, when we had to go online and we had a million technical things go wrong, and we kept telling people, it's fine, we're building the road as we're traveling it, right? And then eventually we got good. And of course, Zoom tripped us up every 3 or 4 weeks with updates on Sunday mornings, because, that's really helpful for us. But we've always said, we're building the road as we're traveling. We're building the road as we're traveling it. Well, that is so true now, right? Because suddenly we're doing something that is brand spanking new. We, Unitarian Universalists, as a rule, have not been doing multi-platform worship at all. We know how to do the sanctuary and we have learned how to do Zoom, but now we're talking about something new, right? And so as we talk and as questions come up, of course, raise your hand or, whatever. But we're going to look at how do we make some of those shifts. And everything we talk about will be somewhat about tech, but not all about tech, right? Like, this is a really tangled web. Everything sort of depends on one another. So I'm not going to say, and now we're going to talk about this one thing, because as you know, that the whole of it has to be considered. So everything's interdependent. So it's going to feel like a tangled mess at times. We're going to go on some cul-de-sacs or some, threads, unfinished threads, cul-de-sacs, get stuck some places, tangents. That's the word I was looking for. Words, it's real. But hopefully it'll begin to make some sense. So you've already been dealing with aesthetics as you've put this equipment into your space. So we're not going to spend much time on that, or camera screen placements. Although I will talk just briefly about some things to keep in mind as you're doing stuff. We'll talk a little bit somewhere in here about accessibility and inclusion and preparation, performance skills and methods, tech considerations, setting expectations, staffing, of course, the liturgy. Well, one of the first thing I say first thing, we've already started, but the first big piece I want to give you is this thought. And that is about what this means for your worshiping community, for your congregation. So Priya Parker wrote a book called The Art of Gathering, and she talks about how we create good gatherings to get done the objectives that we want done. And she talks a lot about how you create, the right boundaries around gatherings, how you make sure they're focused. And one of the things is about place. And she says the venue is a script, that the venue tells a story about who you are and what you want. Now, your congregation, your building has a very specific script. The way that it's shaped, right? Like it tells a story, right? And so when we moved online, there was displacement because you're in a different venue, namely Zoom with everybody in their homes, right? And that caused that displacement. And it took a while for people to get used to where we were, right? So worship changed a little bit. Even if the order of service stayed the same, worship changed. The way it felt changed. Certainly the way it felt when you presented changed. Right? I preached live for the first time in 18 months, 2 weekends ago. And it was so different. Like, for starters, I found out where the laugh lines were, okay? But it was just so different. And it causes just a different way of being. So we've gotten used to this different venue, the online venue. And now we're heading back into our sanctuary step by step, right? And it's going to feel odd. And people are still going to be online. And so suddenly we're creating a third venue, a new place that is in multiple places, right? And so there's still going to be this displacement. There's going to be this unsurety. Part of you will and everybody will want to go back to just the way things were. We're back in our building. But as long as you're planning on streaming anything out of that sanctuary, your venue is different, right? So what we're trying to do, and basically the big guiding principle of my work in this area, is that while we know the online experience will never be the same as the in-person experience, we can endeavor to make it as comparable as possible. So we worked really hard last year to figure out how do we engage people? How do we stay focused? How do we make it work so people are present? We don't want to lose that because we're still going to have a lot of people online. Right? I mean, I know you're just starting basically broadcasting from the sanctuary, but as people begin to come back to the building, you don't want people in the room to feel like they're just at a watch party and people at home feeling like they're a fly on the wall, right? So part of this, and this is the hard part of actually making this venue a venue that is comparable and worshipful for everybody. But there are some ways we can do it. It's big. It's a big task. I'll pause for a second. I promise you I will pause a lot for questions, thoughts.
I do want to share something that probably adds into the tech piece that maybe Nick and others are not aware of. And that's that I'm working with a parent who is a bit of a techie. And so we are working to get a monitor in one of our old classrooms to have a family gathering space for families to view worship as well. So that's happening as well. So they're going to be on Zoom, but they'll be in person. So, I mean, guess that's sort of like another venue, right? It's a different way to engage in worship as a group.
Yeah. Right. And that's really nice, you know, in part that's going to be a watch party, but then thinking about how do they feel included? That's a good question. So I don't have a copy of your order of service in front of me, and that's fine. I don't need it yet. Actually, I don't need it because I'm just sending you a reflection in November. But what are some things, as you've been thinking about, what are some things you changed that you're hoping to change back in terms of what you do with your order of service? Is there anything that changed? It's been so long.
I think we had a conversation, Karen and I, about whether or not we're having our Spirit Lab, which is our religious education faith formation program. So we're condensing our worship down to a 45-minute time limit to start. And Angela, correct me if I have any of this wrong. So then when we have Spirit Lab, the children are going to come right to Spirit Lab, and there will not be a time for all ages. But there has been a resounding yes for keeping time for all ages. So yay. So when there isn't Spirit Lab on those alternate weeks, will be a time for all ages week. And then that'll alternate with joys and sorrows within the worship itself. So that element switches.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. So that's interesting. Time for all ages or joys and sorrows or prayer. Okay. I don't remember how you used to do joys and sorrows, and I don't know how you have been doing it. So can somebody speak to that?
Okay. So the joys and sorrows, what we were doing prior to was people would come up and speak into a microphone and then light a candle and place it in the,
Right. Okay.
And just form a line and kind of go through that.
Yeah.
And then since online, people raise their Zoom hands and they get to speak, and we don't record that part.
Right.
So they get to speak, and then there's a phrase that we say after each one. We hold you in our circle of care for a sorrow, or your joy is our shared joy. And then, move on to the next one.
Okay. So what are you thinking about in terms of joys and sorrows going forward? Because this is the hard one, right? Because especially for congregations like yours that have done like the spoken mic, the candles and all of that stuff. What are you thinking about in terms of joys and sorrows, or what are
So we're not completely, set on this, but we're thinking that the chat chaplain will monitor the chat and bring those things to the worship associate's attention, and also that people will write their joys and sorrows in a book prior to service.
Yes.
And then the worship associate will share that. That's what we're kind of.
That's
what's
great.
Discussed. I'm not 100%. And just if you've had other conversations with Reverend Karen about that, but I think those were some decisions that we were probably that Reverend Karen would probably want to talk about today.
Right. And I think that that's a good solution, because people still want to be able to interact. What I will, and I like the compromise of it, and of having the worship associate basically read all the joys and sorrows that come in. I would say two things. One is make sure that they get mixed up, or sometimes you do the in-person ones and then the online ones, or vice versa. And that's about inclusion. And that's about not making the people who are calling in or, Zooming in feel like second class, right? So it's about priority. Mixing them may be the best way, just to make sure people are just hearing this alternate, So it's Vicky who's in the room, and then it's Nick who's online, or, and not even saying where they are, but they'll know, people will see who's where. The other thing, if you want to go back to some of the candle stuff, consider aiming one of those cameras at the candle spot and having somebody, so if it's the worship associate doing the joys and sorrows, the speaker, the minister doing the candles, or vice versa, or whatever, but have that camera actually focused on it. And I didn't set up my chalice cam, but to have the camera right there, seeing those candles and just seeing the hand, lighting those candles will be really meaningful, because they'll hear, Vicky's got this thing, Jessica's got that thing, Nick's got this thing, right? They'll get that, they'll see that a candle is being lit for them. And because they're rotatable and zoomable, you can arrange that. You may have to move where that table is, but I think that may bring back a little bit of the old without completely, Yeah,
we actually visited somewhere where they did that. They had somebody lighting the candles as people were speaking. And mostly it worked. We have someone who wanted to make sure that a candle was lit for each one of the things that they shared, so that was a little You remember that, Jess?
Sometimes you just start lighting candles.
No, they had to be the specific one.
Oh,
But hopefully we won't have that.
I love people.
But that was a neurodivergent person, and that minister was very accommodating and patient, and it was beautiful because they were in the sanctuary. So there are congregations that have already had their worship team in the sanctuary. So it was a nice sort of coming together. It was nice. I like to see the actual candles being lit too.
I think it's a really good idea.
And like I said, it will bring back a memory of the old, but you're doing it in a new way that includes everybody. And this may also be a point no, never mind, just kidding. Sorry. One of the things, I'll finish the thought, but not related to joys and sorrows. One of the things that will also help make people feel included and seen is pick a few times in the order of service where what is shown on the TV in the room is the gallery view of the Zoom call, right? So that people online are seen by the people in the room. Now, the flip side of that is occasionally take one of those cameras, it's 360, right? And rotate it to catch part of the congregation. And I say part. Usually I do this later in the thing, but I'm going to do it now. My outline's all blown to hell already. It's great. We all know that there are people who cannot or will not be on camera, right? People who have restraining orders, orders of protection, are, have other reasons for not being seen on camera, right? So it's really important, however you set everything up, wherever you tell all the cameras to go, to make sure there's a zone in the room that is a no coverage zone and it's clearly marked. Maybe just with blue tape, maybe just ribbons on the edge of the chairs or something, right? Because you do want to get a congregation view now and then. That's really useful to the people online to see once there are people in the room other than the worship leaders. once you start having congregants there, it's nice to be able to see them too. But make sure you're always having that section where people can be fully present, fully engaged, fully in the room, and have no danger of being seen on camera.
So we're doing probably RSVP to do our signups, and we're doing it by pod. So that would be a question to add to the RSVP, that if you do not want to be seen on camera, we have to assign them to a pod that's in the no-fly zone.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep. And that's something that most people aren't thinking about, but I can think of a dozen people that I know from various congregations who would never step foot in a congregation again if they thought they were going to be on camera.
Well, it's for foster families too. It's a
Yep.
a thing where if you're fostering, you can't be showing
That's
pictures of the kiddos. So
right.
Yep.
Oh yeah. People who are trans and aren't out,
right.
Except in their safe communities, which we hope we are one.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to keep that safety.
I mean, there may be, if we put like a generic question on the survey, there's probably plenty of people who would prefer not to just randomly be on camera. How do we kind of make it so that because I don't even know how much, it's not a huge space that's not visible, if I'm remembering correctly. Right. There's like a corner that probably with social distancing would maybe only be able to have four, one pod. Nick, if you remember, or Jess, if you remember how big that area is. I
wonder if instead of putting do you want to be on, because people are going, I don't know. Maybe you make it a little bit more of a pull and say, if you would like to be in the sanctuary but have concerns about being on camera, please contact. And then if it's just Alice who just, I never look good on camera, tough shit. But if it's the foster family, we got you,
Thank you.
Yeah. And that may help. And it's probably just the first time, right? Because if it's the foster family, every time they come, they've got to be in that pod, So I think that may be a better way to do it, because people who are just like, I don't like the way I look on camera, are not going to go through that whole process. Right. Yeah. But I think that's a good solution. And I just think it's really important. One of the videos I show in the regular training it's done by a guy from Good Stewards Productions, definitely made for a Christian audience. And he talks about capturing the whole congregation. And I'm like, hang on. So, yeah. So just think through that and think about, what are the visual cues for the camera operator to know where that line is too, so that they don't do it by accident. Cool. But yeah, looking at your order of service, go ahead, Nick.
Oh, sorry. I think when we set up the cameras, we had talked about making sure there were a couple rows that were right underneath one of the cameras.
Mm-hmm.
So we sort of built in this space.
Good.
Theoretically,
good.
I haven't been in there to see it yet, but yeah, we've tried to build in that space where we ensure that there are some people who are not on camera.
Fabulous. So good to hear. Yep. But then in terms of showing the congregation gathered to each other, you've got like your bond of union. That's a great time to show the offering, or during the offertory. Those, before the service starts too, is occasionally a good time. just having those couple of places where those in the room can see, oh yeah, and there's 20 people online, and the people online go, oh my God, there are people in our sanctuary, right? Like it's meaningful. It's really meaningful. And again, it begins to break down some of that wall. It breaks down that us versus them, the sort of clique, oh, we're the in-person clique. And not that they're ever going to use those words, but that kind of thing happens, right? But it's also going to make people feel a little more included. In terms of your offering, I'm assuming you're doing online giving, and are you going to continue to encourage that, or are you thinking about passing a basket again? You're muted.
Supposed to be able to just hit my space bar, but it doesn't seem to work.
It doesn't always work for me either. So
yeah. So I think the idea is that we're going to do online, but also have a basket in the back, like people.
Okay, that's good.
Passing the basket.
Yeah.
I think that's another thing we're still kind of, settling on. And if you have suggestions that you think would work best for that,
I think that works best, even though the chances of me masked handing the basket to you masked is the test of passing anything other than a basket is practically nil. There's still some sense of, I don't know, so it's not about the surface stuff. It's just about how close can I get to you, and should I? And some people are more anxious about it than others. We know that, right? And so putting a basket in the back for those who still want to write a check and want the thrill of like putting their change in the basket and hearing that sound and going, right, that's church, right? Like everybody's got their thing. But honestly, continuing the online giving as your primary is so good. I mean, we should have been doing this before the pandemic. I remember sitting in General Assembly, and yeah, they had those envelopes where you could fill out all the stuff, but then you were just like, okay, here we go. Right. Boom, done. $20 to this thing, $50 to that thing,
And Angela, am I correct? We are not doing a paper order of service, correct? We're only doing it through the monitor, or we are having one?
Monitor. No paper order of service.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing I would say, and I hadn't thought about this until, I don't know, a couple of months ago when somebody brought up that if you've got some neurodivergent folk who are coming, sometimes having the piece of paper with the order of service helps them focus on the service. So what you may want to do is just do a simplified one sheet, basically what you sent to me, Angela, that if they, if they really need something, they can hold on to that.
I wonder if we could get some laminated. I was just thinking about the giving piece, and if we had like a QR code.
Yes.
A QR code would be a lot easier for people in person.
Yep.
So maybe next to the basket, if someone wants to just snap it with their phone.
I just even put it up on the slide that you have up on the monitor.
Yeah.
And QR generators are a dime a dozen now.
Right.
They're it's an easy thing to generate. Which when I discovered it, I was just like, this is the best. Yeah, maybe just a laminated, like this is our typical order of service. And I know that Foothills in Fort Collins, Colorado does that. They just say, this is our typical order of service. Some things may vary.
I thought it would be nice too for families, like for little ones, because they they need to sort of understand how the service
Mhm.
flows if they're
Right,
in
right.
another room.
Yeah. But I wouldn't do tons and tons of them, and I would have them available, but for people to basically ask, like, you know. But I think it's important to have the, again, this is an accessibility thing, and we don't think about it. I am, you know, I have tended to be the, I don't want an order of service, because if I decide I'm going to skip something, or I'm going to change the order of something, I don't want somebody coming up to me at coffee hour and go, notice you skipped the meditation. Or, why did you do that little ritual in the middle of your sermon? Why wasn't it on the order of service? I literally got that once. I wish I had known you were going to do a ritual in the middle of your sermon. Really?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that, right, you have a sense of, okay, I'm coming in with a sense of wonder. I know generally what's going to happen. And I am willing to be open and surprised and present to the moment. So it's two sides of that.
Yeah.
So anyway.
I also just am very compelled for any of you who've read Braiding Sweetgrass. The moment where she talks about how she sees every single piece of paper as a slice of a tree.
Yep.
When she described that, I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Every piece of paper again in the same way ever.
Yeah. Which is why it's a good idea to maybe do a dozen laminated basic orders of service, and maybe two-sided. Maybe on the back of it, you do include basic information about the congregation or blah, 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 because that's also something for newcomers when newcomers come back into our buildings, you know.
And could that even have the QR code? Like, could that be on the back of the laminate so that you can take a picture? Because
absolutely.
it always goes to the same PayPal, right?
Yep. Yeah. See? You're so good. I also wonder, it's something you put in the front of the hymnal, or just slide it in almost as a bookmark. I don't know. I don't know if that's worth doing. It's more paper.
I don't know that we're looking to have the hymnal out.
Okay, then never mind. I was just.
I mean, I'm not sure, but
I think the answer was no from Reverend Karen, at least at the onset of this. We're going with just words on the screen.
Okay. Do know, however, there are people who really will sing better if they've got one. So don't completely put them away. But again, let somebody ask. Because like, I really sing better out of a hymnal. Do we have any hymnals?
We're not singing for quite a while.
Okay. Well, that's true. You're not. You're right. You're right. Never mind. Forget what I just said. I'm so excited about singing. I haven't yet, but I'm so excited about singing. I'm like already thinking about it.
It's an interesting accessibility piece for those folks who are really desperate to sing. They can stay online and sing to their heart's content.
Yes.
If you're in the sanctuary, you can only hum along. So
that's right.
There's an accessibility piece that goes in the reverse.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. I mean, nobody sang, only the people on the chancel sang when I was in person in Lewis Beach.
We're not even doing that.
I know. It was really something though. Anyway, so now here's another piece to think about, and it's less of an issue this first little bit, but as you get rolling and as you begin to have guests, speakers from online, also think about the other parts of the service, the chalice lighting, the time for all ages, a reading, the offering ask, even welcome and announcements, some of these other pieces that get done by other people could be done by somebody who's not in the room as easily as they can be done by somebody who's in the room. That their location should not be a barrier to participating in the worship service itself.
I think, unfortunately, we won't be able to hear people who are at home. So the only way we could do that is if we included videos, which we might make a good idea to like insist that we do that regularly.
So you're not going to be able to feed in anything live. So I would never. So if I preached for you, and I was still here in Maryland, I would have to send in a video. There's no way you're going to be able to get a live feed.
I believe that's true. I think you could, yeah, I think that's true. I think you could live feed to Zoom, but not to the not to the sanctuary. Huh. We're gonna clarify that on Saturday.
Because that's something that I would encourage. If you can make that happen, if one of the feeds that goes through the sound system can be the Zoom feed.
So they were, yeah, we discussed this with our company, and they said that switch adds like a couple $1,000.
Holy shit. Okay.
Yeah. So but we're gonna clarify Saturday, because Karen and I were speaking about this yesterday too. So
all right,
we're gonna get this some kind of workaround.
So at the very least, ask for people who are not going to be there to send in videos of chalice lightings or the reading or whatever, right? Because again, there's this, if the only people who can present are the people who can be in the room, that sends a signal to those who can never be in the room or not for a long time or not, or never, right? I don't know how many snowbirds y'all have. Like I'm from upstate New York. We got shit tons of them. But how nice it has been for, say, my home congregation in Saratoga Springs, that they can still have their snowbirds participating in worship, even though they're in Georgia or Florida or whatever, right? And so they're going to continue to dial in online.
We are also talking about having remote membership for that reason. So we're working on that in tandem with this multi-platform as well.
Yeah. And I think any way you can find to include voices that are not physically in your sanctuary, the more it's going to feel like you're one congregation and nobody's being excluded. Right.
I think it'd be really easy too to go to that family room and have them do the chalice lighting, or
oh my God,
kids during Spirit Lab do the chalice lighting or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Oh
because
yeah.
we did that when the pandemic first started and we went online. I went around and videotaped the kids lighting the chalice. So that was really cool. And I think we got to see more kids than we did before.
Sure.
Times.
Right. And I think that's really important. Obviously, families are really struggling still. How are we coming back? I mean, it's getting better. We think they're on the verge of approving the vaccine for 5 to 11, but still, families are zoomed out and exhausted. We get that, and they're not coming. So the more we can make ways for them to feel still part of the congregation. And sometimes it's just, hey, would you folks do the story? Or would you do something really cool around this offering ask? Yeah. So where are we? 7:47. Okay. Are there any other questions or thoughts around your order of service, around the things you do from gathering music to blessing? just in terms of sort of the practicalities of ritual and that kind of. Feel pretty good? Nick, will there be live music from the sanctuary, live instrumental?
Yes, there will be live. Only instrumental music will be live.
Yeah, cool.
All the hymns will be pre-recorded.
Sure. Cool. Okay.
Yeah,
that'll be nice. That'll be nice.
And yeah, we've decided for this first one, there will be quite a few little interjections, and I think I'm actually starting. I think the gathering music is starting like 10 minutes beforehand, which is what we used to do, right? So
yeah.
Everyone would gather in the lobby and they'd hear music, and then we'd ring the bell.
Right.
So I think we're going to sort of try to recreate that.
Nice.
And then little meditative instrumental piano moments throughout. And I think there's one hymn that'll be pre-recorded, and
nice.
And then the offertory is also pre-recorded. Yeah.
Right. Okay, cool. Excellent. Yeah. Well, that does, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, that was it.
Oh, okay. So that actually provides a really awesome segue into my next thinking and the next point I want to make, which is about the sort of unstructured moment of coming in, right? So you're now, well, after these first few weeks, you're now going to have some people coming into the room, right? Which is great. Yay, they're going to see everybody's whole bodies. And you're still going to have people coming in online. So think about what people are seeing, right? Because the people in the room are going to be having a very different experience because they're seeing the full bodies of people they haven't seen in 18 months, or however long it's been. And there's going to be that chatter and the hubbub and stuff. So think about how you're holding the people online to make sure that they're having some interaction. And I don't remember, I'm assuming your chat people engage folks before the service starts?
We don't actually. We have a 5-minute prelude video, and that includes our announcements and upcoming things.
Okay. So people aren't chatting?
No.
Typing chat?
I mean, they're invited to put in the chat where they're coming from, where they're, chatting, coming in from, but then also we have a whole little thing that we say that if you find the chat distracting, to ignore it.
Okay. Okay.
And we don't allow everybody to unmute themselves. Like once worship starts, everybody's quiet.
Sure. And that's good. That's really smart. Because I have heard some really strange things, including a fight over whether it was seeded rye or seedless rye. I want the seedless rye. We don't have any seedless rye. It's all seeded. No, I bought it. We're like scrambling for the mute. I love people. So I guess and maybe this is something to watch as people begin to come worship in the sanctuary with you. Feel the energy, because I again, this is one of those places where if people are online and don't even get to say hi and they're like, hopefully they're not watching their friends hugging and they can't, so just be really cautious and careful about what that looks like.
I think everyone's going to be getting the prolonged prelude video. It's going to be like a 10-minute, here's our announcements video.
Right. Okay. All right.
And then the online.
But there's still going to be that experience in the room,
Yes, but they're going to see it on the monitor as well.
Right.
So yes, the people at home will not see the high-fiving or whatever is not supposed to happen, which is actually going to happen.
Right. Let's be real. Because they're going to do the thing like, oh, okay,
I'm actually not sure, like this is a good place to address this, is we're we're limited to 45 minutes in the sanctuary. And I think we haven't quite figured out whether people are going to be waiting outside the door, like, or in the lobby and then enter. Like, I mean, as far as I know, people are going to be ushered in groups. So, it's not going to be like a free for all where everybody's just milling about greeting everybody.
Well,
I'm not sure how much control we've really planned for. I guess that's going to come up on Saturday when we're all together.
And it's also an interesting question about, because I know, your space is good, but it's not huge. Where are those pods how are you going to divide people to make sure that they're not running in?
Yeah, we're marking the floors with tape.
Nice. Okay.
So each one will be taped off, and then the chairs are going to get set into the pods.
Okay. Okay. All right. That makes sense. Yeah. I don't know. Just, I guess the word is just be aware that the energy is going to be really different in those incoming moments, and to be conscious of, of the feeling of FOMO for the people online. That's real. And that may be more pastoral, and that's, again, a good reason to interact with the people online. So, all right. So let me shift just really quickly to, you're not worried about that. Okay. So I want to talk not so much about tech anymore, and more about the performance of it, because that's the other big piece of this, right? Like when we have presented in a room, we learned how to talk to different points in the congregation, right? Where to put our scripts so we could be seen, all of that. And then we got online and we all put our scripts right under the camera, and we talk to the camera, and we try not to look around, although it's really tempting when you're doing something like this to look down here, because that's where Andrea is, right? But we've gotten really good at this. Well, now we've got both. So there are some things we can do, and these are performance things. These are things, believe it or not, that we learn from award shows and late night talk shows. Because award shows and late night talk shows have in common somebody presenting in a room with an audience that they're engaging with, and the camera. So I'm just going to show you this clip. Now, this is, Nick, you're not going to see the lesson until you go back and watch it again.
Okay.
But you can still hear, the story. So this clip is from the second episode of Colbert's Late Show. And what I'm inviting you to watch is, he does do a little bit of sort of dancing back and forth on one foot, and I suspect that's nervous energy, but watch where he's looking, and listen to this rather funny story. So first of all, if CBS can screw up, we're fine, right? Which is why I love showing that story. But you notice he's talking primarily to the camera, but he's looking over here and he's looking over there and he's interacting, right? You'll see the same thing if you watch award shows. Neil Patrick Harris and the Tonys is masterful at this. He's talking to 5,000 people, and every single person in that room feels like he's talking to them, and so do you. So remember when we learned how to drive? I don't know if you had this experience, but my driving instructor was very clear about the look in the side mirror, look at the front, look at the rear view, look at the front, look at the side, look at the front, look at the rear, right? Like, and that's kind of the same thing, so be aware that you're primarily looking at the camera, because when I'm looking at the camera, you see me. When I'm only ever looking out at the pretend people in the sanctuary, which is actually the cat tree, right? I'm not as connected. Or God forbid, the camera's only to the side and you're only ever seeing this. And I'm talking to all the people, right? So really think about, hopefully, I don't know what your cameras look like. Hopefully there's a little red or green light. I love the green light on my webcam. And it calls you back to it. Jessica.
Yes, I was thinking while I watched that video, I would say 90% of what he does is to the camera, because I would say the majority of his audience is there.
Right.
Would you say that translates directly for us in this multi-platform world? Are we asking like Reverend Karen to do 90% to the camera, or do you think it's less?
I would say aim for somewhere in the 60 to 70% to the camera.
Okay.
And I say that having now preached in person on a multi-platform worship, that I got a chance to watch back and said, okay, I felt like I was seeing me, or, that I was speaking to me, basically. And figured it was a little over half. But also there were some wonderful moments of, there was laughter, and I made a second joke to that, to where that laughter came from, right? Like, I had a moment, and everybody was in. I'm sure everybody was in with that moment, but I was definitely talking to that family right there. Some other things to think about are movement, right? Now you do have a camera that moves. However, I don't know. When I'm not tied to a pulpit, I want to move like crazy. I want to walk, I want a Madonna mic, and I want to like pace all over the place, right? It's pretty important to anchor yourself a little bit more, only because the constant moving around will get a little hard. And we don't have union camera operators, right? I mean, there's the other part. The union camera operator could follow Colbert into the audience and wherever he's going, right? We need to think about the limits of volunteers too, which is also a really good reason to focus. The other thing that's really important is thinking about where your script is going to be. Because again, we've gotten used to now having the script right under our cameras on our laptops. And when we've been in pulpits, I don't remember how high yours is, fairly high, isn't it? It's right there, but you're still looking down. So you don't want to be head in your pulp, in your script. You want to make sure that there's some eye contact. Right. So I think about, and Nick will appreciate this, every choir director I know, pick up your music, right? So put that stuff a little bit higher. It's okay. Or I preach from my iPad, and I have a strap. I don't have it here, but I actually have a strap that goes on this, and it holds it to my hand. If you've seen me preach, you know that that's what I do. But it means that I can speak from my notes, be present to the camera, still see my thing, scroll with my thumb, and have more eye contact. And it's okay to have notes in your hand. So what are we looking at time? Yeah, all right, I'm entertaining you. So I want to show you another clip, and this is Neil Patrick Harris at the Tonys in 2013. And he's working with notes.
So, this is my 4th time hosting. I love it more each time. But I noticed an inherent problem for people who produce and market the shows. Some people like plays, yeah? Some people like musicals. That's the problem. It's like a group divided. Who are you marketing to? So I have a great idea, guaranteed to make it easier. They're called Playsicles. You combine a classic play with a classic musical, and then you get everyone, and everybody's happy. Hear me out. They're called mashups. I do them every year. They're rarely funny, but I enjoy them. The Elephant Man of La Mancha. 42nd Streetcar Named Desire. Children of a Lesser God spell. Think about it. Cats on a hot tin roof. A tap number in there somewhere, I just know it. The Testament of Mary Poppins. Oh man, what's Scott Rudin gonna write about that one? Too soon? A Midsummer Night's Dream Girls. It's a big number in there. Oh. The Diary of Anne Frankenstein the Musical. Too soon? Justin Bieber would love that show. I'm just saying. He'd think that was like Cabaretin in the Sun. Vanya and Sonia and Masha and Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. That's current. That's a current one. And my favorite, Bring It On Golden Pond. Something to think about. Thank you. It's for you. I do it for the community.
Now you'll notice that he probably did closer to the 50 to 60% looking at the camera, right? And also look down at his notes. It's okay to look down, right? Like we don't have to be automatons. It's okay, but just don't get stuck in them because nobody wants to see that. I mean, right. So these are things that are not, we're not used to doing it, right? This is that weird third thing. Go ahead, Angela.
So my specific concern is, and I don't remember, but I think that the camera is pretty high up, you know, like it's overhead.
Ooh.
So this is kind of where you end up being. I'm not positive. I haven't seen it in, but I know we have that really high arch, and I think it was going to be set there, and I don't know how far it's dropped down.
Okay.
Nick, do you or just?
I think your concern is valid, but I think it's actually it's going to be more like eye level, or at least one of them will be.
Okay.
I believe we set one like right above the entry doorways.
Okay, good.
And so when you're on the pulpit, it should be pretty much right ahead of you. You may have to look up a little bit. And then I think another one was going to be a similar height just over on one of the sides.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
And I think,
but I mean, you will still have to look higher than normal, but I don't think it's going to be, you're not looking up to the sky.
Right. Okay, good. Because now that I remember that, and I remember because my concern was, cool. It's so far away. How is it we're gonna look like little ants in the room? But apparently the cameras can be focused and zoomed in, and
beautiful.
That's right. Yeah, they'll all zoom, and it'll feel like it's very far away for you, but sometimes it will be a close up, and sometimes it'll be a wide shot, and those are all things we'll figure out, on Saturday when we're walking through all this stuff, and we'll all be able to see what each thing looks like and all that. So
yeah, that's great. I would also recommend practicing. I mean, not just practicing doing it, but try and record it. I was going to say tape it because, you know, it's 1987 or something. But record it and watch it back, you know, do the old, you know, Monday morning football, you know, see what you see. Also, once you get a sense on Saturday for where things are, so to get a sense in your body of how high did you look, and then practice at home, right? Set your computer up to where the camera kind of is and practice with kids, pets, spouses, whatever you've got that can help you. And if you don't have anybody at home, honestly, you're going to laugh, but just put pictures of faces around like their audience, you know, like their people in the congregation, because you're going to respond to them better than you're going to respond to the ornament and the, you know, the chalice and the box of Kleenex, right? But if in front of the box of Kleenex is a picture of, I don't know, Idris Elba or or somebody, I don't know, you're going to have a chance, you know, the face thing is going to work. So it is worth practicing and looking back and saying, did I look down in my notes too much? Did I look up too much? How is my, you know, how is this working? Oddly enough, just teaching this over and over gave me a lot of practice. So when I was in person, I'm like, oh, right, these skills again. Here we go. I know how to do this now. Yeah, and again, we're building the road as we're traveling it. We're trying to figure this stuff out. But if you remember that most of the people you're talking to are on the other side of that little green light, you know, you're going to want to look at the people in the room, but you got to remember the people on the other side of the light. You're pretty well mic'd for this new setup. Yeah. Okay. That's good. Because here's another, go ahead.
Yeah, we have a bunch of, we're using the same mic, basically the same mic setup as we've had in the past. It'll just be routed into the streaming system.
Okay.
So I think everyone should have a mic on them, or they're speaking into the pulpit mic. And there are also overhead mics to pick up.
Right. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Because something that I didn't take into account until I was in Delaware was we are speaking differently when we speak on Zoom, that we're not projecting the way that we had been, because I'm talking to a computer that's 2 feet away, not people who are in a sanctuary, you know. So it's worth, I've started doing this now, it's worth doing some vocal exercises and breathing exercises, because we're not used to this kind of speaking. You know, if we had only been online for 2 or 3 months, none of this would be an issue. But we've been online long enough that we're not breathing right for projection. And it may be less so in the first few weeks when you don't have anybody sitting in the congregation. But once you've got people, the energy is so different and it's a little disorienting. Right. And you want to still project and we know the camera sucks energy, right? Like I physically am bigger from here to here than I would be normally, because the camera sucks so much energy out of us. And then you're getting so much energy from people. You know, like it's different people are going to have different reactions to it, but be aware that even if we've been shopping and even if we've been in small group gatherings and even if we've gone to see a show, which I've done, there's still it still feels a little different. So just be aware of that. Be remembering that energy is a real thing and we're going to feel some different things. And again, we're building the road as we're traveling it. You're going to do great. You're going to do great. You've got a good setup. You've been doing this really purposefully, really focused. I'm cheering you on. So, because I'll tell you the truth, there are a lot of congregations I've preached at and led workshops at, but then there are some that I think of as kind of, oh, they're my peeps, and y'all are some of my peeps. Okay, so you're my people. Anyway, any more questions, comments? Think like Karen. What else would she ask? We got you, Karen.
Yes, that was the challenge.
I know.
I have a question I think she might ask, which is how do we sort of end out our time together? You know, I know she's really considerate of this 45-minute thing. And, you know, how do we say goodbye to people online and usher folks out of the actual space?
Good questions. So I think would be really worth having basically music for parting. So after the final blessing or the benediction, then have exiting music. And, you know, maybe focus one of the camera, maybe it's Nick playing for 5 minutes and the camera focused there and they hear the music. And yes, people are going to hear some of the hum of the hustle and bustle as people are getting out. But it's also going to give other people a sense of, okay, you know, we didn't just end the feed, right? Yeah. You may want to go back to gallery view at that point too, you know, and just have that on the screen for the people in the room to wave to their friends, bye.
I'm not sure if this can get answered here, but I'm going to put it in here for Karen's reference about whether we're doing online coffee hour and in person, because I know we're having social hour in person some Sundays. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out.
We did talk about having, you know, while as weather permits, having coffee hour out on the patio by the playground, and having laptops there that people can, you know, interact with people on Zoom.
Well, I know, I think as of today or yesterday, it's going to be at the end of the parking lot down by the school. And I'm not sure the reasoning behind that, but that's where we're at. So,
yeah, right.
Sorry.
Didn't know
and if you're going to do that, you have to be really clear with the people who are on Zoom. Stick around, you know, because your friends are going to come and say hi.
Yeah, Karen will tell me tomorrow the reasoning behind it, but Colleen has wanting to doing it down there, and I'm not quite sure why.
Interesting.
So that came up at the board meeting?
No, I think it's just something she's, you know, sort of organizing those, and there was a conversation about the canopies and whether she could use them or not, and where and when. So,
okay,
yeah.
Oh, church.
I know. Joy of all joys.
Yeah, but I think you want to have something that is a music for parting, is a, you know, not a sit down postlude necessarily, but just a, you know, thanks for being here, see ya. And that just makes it feel less abrupt to the people online, I think.
We do have a posted plan for this weekend, so we'll.
Good.
And I'm quite sure. Sorry, I'm eating. Quite sure we're planning to record it all as you, and so we'll see. You know, we'll get to watch what that's like, and maybe the live maybe there's some way to do like live postlude for the people in person, and then like pipe in parting music for the people at home, you know.
Maybe.
Or maybe
Sure.
maybe it's I mean, I know there's a way to do that, but maybe it's beneficial for people at home to hear the buzz in the room.
Yeah, right.
And that
right.
serves so as filtering out, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that having as much of the same experience as possible is really valuable. It makes people feel like they're there, or not there, but you know, that they're not watching a show and everybody else is worshiping. You know, that's the hard part, right? We want to make sure that people feel like they are having a worshipful experience. And when we're all in the same venue, the one place, we're at least all in it together, right? So when we all moved online, okay, it's different, it's weird. Is this worship? I'm in my PJs, but we're all having the same experience, right? And worship sneaks in, right? Spirit has a way. But when we do this when we do dual platform, these two different places, we want to make sure that there's still a sense of worshipfulness, that there's still a sense of we are still worshiping together, that where you are part of this community, wherever you are. There we go. There's the whole word. Wherever you are still part of this community. You know, so yes, do you want to shout out the people online when you've got people in the room? Of course. Do you want to make them stand out like they're the weirdos? No, you know. So some of your language needs to be careful. That's why I say things like joys and sorrows, you want to mix that up. You want to make sure that it feels like it's just everybody. And it doesn't matter where you're calling in or worshiping from. That's the word. Sorry, it's been a long day. Any more questions? I don't even know what time it is anymore. Does anybody really know what time it is? Anybody really care?
It's 8:22.
About time. There we go.
And I think you know, that's a good point about the joys and sorrows, because that's something I would not have even thought of, you know, the mixing them and not saying, you know, and coming in from, you know, the chat line is, you know, like that, not calling attention to it, just kind of making them all seamless. That's a really good
if we do it right, you shouldn't be able to discern whether the person is in the sanctuary or online or in the family room or not attending at all that week and they're in the hospital or whatever. You shouldn't be able to discern any of that.
Yeah.
And Karen, I think, will be really good at that. So I'm not
I do too.
about that.
I do too. Yeah, you know, I remember the very first year that General Assembly had offsite delegates. I was one of the testers on that. And they would do the thing, call the vote, get all the numbers, announce the numbers, and go, oh yeah, and the online delegates voted for this thing. And I was like, as though we were like a suspect class or something, and forgotten sometimes, right? And so once they got more practiced at it, like, okay, we're still waiting for votes to come in, you know, and they just wouldn't point out, oh, we're waiting for the online people, blah, 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 right? So those are those are some of those experiences that, I mean, that was 10 years ago, and I'm still like, it matters now. So any other questions, thoughts, comments? Feeling good? You know how to get me, you know. I'm on Facebook, Karen, talk to Karen. Karen, talk to me. Yeah, I think that's everything.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah,
oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Do let me know if there's anything I can do. And I will be doing the message for the 14th.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I'll send you something. I don't know where I'm supposed to send it yet, but
Send it to me
okay.
and to Reverend Karen is fine. And
Yeah.
to Nick, that
Yeah.
would
Yeah,
I know that
we'll,
there's a whole lot of other stuff being planned for that. So I don't think I'm doing much more than the sermon.
be. Okay.
yeah, I think that's right. We'll send you a link to
Okay.
Our folder.
we'll other email, and you can just email it to us if it's small enough, or a Google Drive link that you can upload to.
Yeah, great. Okay. I mean, I'd like to know what else is being planned and what other input you need from me, but I think I'm just on the hook for the message.
Cool. Yeah, I know Reverend Karen is working on that. So
Yep.
she'll get that soon. Yeah.
Cool. Yay. All right, friends. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And good luck. Break a leg, married, all the things. All right.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Nice to see you all. Take care.
See you all. Bye.